Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. Armenia is standing at a historic crossroads. A decision over who will build its next nuclear power plant could determine not only the country's energy independence, but also its geopolitical alignment for decades to come. As global powers compete for influence in the South Caucasus, the choice between East and West has never been more consequential. So, without further ado, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Armenia stands at a decisive moment in its energy future, as Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's government prepares to choose a partner for constructing a new nuclear power plant to replace the aging Metsamor facility. The decision, framed as purely economic, could nonetheless carry profound geopolitical consequences. In a recent parliamentary session, Pashinyan revealed that Armenia is in talks with 5 countries – Russia, the United States, China, France and South Korea – about building a small modular reactor. Yet the stakes are high. Metsamor, commissioned in 1976, currently supplies around 30% of Armenia's electricity. Its lifespan has been extended to 2036 thanks to modernization efforts, largely in cooperation with Russia's Rosatom. But the clock is ticking and the need for a replacement is urgent. Russia is lobbying hard to retain its role, with President Vladimir Putin personally advocating for Rosatom. Armenia, however, is also pursuing a 1-2-3 agreement with the United States, a prerequisite for nuclear cooperation and technology transfer. This move signals a potential shift in Armenia's strategic orientation, away from Moscow and toward a more diversified set of global partnerships.
And now, let's zone in on the East planning portion of our show. Putin's grip on Armenia is slipping as Yerevan pivots west, challenging decades of Russian dominance in the South Caucasus. Once deeply reliant on Moscow for security and trade, Yerevan is now embracing Western alliances and institutions amid growing public disillusionment with Kremlin-backed policies.
Under Vladimir Putin's rule, Russia has maintained a firm grip on Armenia, leveraging historical ties and strategic interests to secure its influence in the South Caucasus. Armenia has relied heavily on Moscow for military protection and economic lifelines, like discounted gas and remittances from a million-strong diaspora in Russia, which accounts for over 40% of Armenia's foreign trade. Putin's government has pressured Yerevan to toe the line on foreign policy, from vetoing Western deals to dominating media landscapes with Russian-language outlets reaching 90% of households. Yet this partnership has exacted a steep price, especially amid the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war and the 2023 Azerbaijani offensive that displaced 100,000 Armenians, where Russian peacekeepers stood idle, fueling public fury. A 2024 poll showed trust in Russia plummeting to just 31% from 93% in 2019. Recently, disillusionment has sparked a bold shift. In February 2024, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan froze Armenia's participation in the Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization and joined the International Criminal Court in October 2023, risking Putin's arrest on its soil. Yerevan has diversified arms from India and France, withdrawn Russian border guards from key sites, and embraced Western overtures. A €270 million EU resilience plan in 2024, $65 million in US aid, visa liberalization talks launched in September 2024, and an endorsed EU accession bill backed by 58% of the public.
And now, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Armenia stands at a defining moment. The country is preparing to choose a partner for the construction of a new nuclear power plant, a decision that could shape its energy future and geopolitical course for decades to come. The project aims to replace the aging Metsamor facility, a Soviet-era plant that currently supplies about 30% of Armenia's electricity and is said to be retired by 2036 after an extended lifespan. 5 nations are in the running for the contract. Russia, the United States, China, France, and South Korea. Officials insist the choice will be guided purely by economics, not politics. Yet in Armenia's case, energy and politics have always been inseparable. And for years, the country's energy sector has been firmly under Moscow's influence. Roughly 85% of Armenia's gas is imported from Russia under a 2022 deal priced at more than twice the global market rate. The gas network is owned by Gazprom Armenia, and Russian-linked companies control 4 of the 5 largest power plants. Even the current nuclear power plant relies entirely on Russian technology and fuel. The recent steps suggest a desire to loosen this dependence. The government has moved to nationalize major energy assets previously owned by Russian interests and is deepening discussions with Western partners. Talks with the United States over a nuclear cooperation agreement could pave the way for small modular reactor technology. However, the cost of a new nuclear unit, estimated at $5 to $7 billion, nearly double Armenia's annual budget, poses a major challenge alongside a decade-long construction timeline. A deal with Western partners could anchor Armenia more firmly in the orbit of the United States and Europe. A renewed partnership with Russia would cement old dependencies. So the outcome will decide not just who builds Armenia's next reactor, but who holds the power behind it. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is George Mchedlishvili, Associate Professor of European University in Tbilisi. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
So today we're trying to examine Armenia's next nuclear power plant and what does that mean geopolitically. Now, from the outside looking in, I think there are a lot of interest is in whether or not they're going to be more dependent on either Russia or the West for its energy independence. Do you think that this is reading too much into the tea leaves? Is it really a geopolitical decision, or is it more of a pragmatic one, or a little bit of both?
Well, exactly. That's a little bit of both, because their issues are interrelated. Energy, of course, this is a lifeline of economic security and therefore economy of the country. And of course, it has serious political ramifications, and it is very well known for countries which are not energy rich that Russia has been using energy card as a potent political weapon, trying to twisting arm politically. Ukrainians and Georgians know it firsthand on several occasions before fully fledged invasion. So Georgia on several occasions used economic card, so energy dependency of these countries on Russia, in an attempt to modify political developments, I would say, in this country. So therefore, it is quite understandable that one of the weaknesses of Armenia today, as it tries to extricate itself from this, the bear-like grip of Russia, is to become more independent economically, and energy independence is, of course, a key. Well, this Metsamor nuclear station in Armenia is on its last legs. Probably it should be shut down in a few years' time. Actually, it is already not in a very good shape. Therefore, so strategic planning in this regard is very important for Armenia's future, and it is quite understandable that this is also the area when Armenia tries to distance itself from Russia.
All right, so when it comes to the logistics side of things, just economically speaking purely, who has the better advantage in actually helping Armenia build this nuclear power plant? Is it Russia? Is it the United States?
Well, Russia is closer. So this nuclear power plant was built in Soviet times, so basically by Russians. And therefore, obviously, they do have a head start. But I believe there is also a serious amount of political will today in Armenia, and understanding that too much dependency on Russia will be very difficult down the road. Elections are coming in Armenia in about 8 months' time. So Russia made no secret that it supports the forces which oppose the current leadership, precisely for that reason, for the reason of the leadership wanting to, I would say, not modify, but broaden its political interactions and not be as pro-Russian as previous leaderships were. So, given this understanding and given these realities, Russia tries to retain its grip on Armenia, and Armenia tries to loosen it. Today, there is a window of opportunity. As we all know, Azerbaijan took advantage of the window of opportunity. Some other countries try to do that. So Russia is so bogged down in Ukraine, there is a possibility for the other countries to loosen this Russia's grip, and in this particular regard, Armenia is trying its best. And the very fact that the peace agreement, this trip, the Trump road of logistical road in the south of Armenia. So with some people call like Zangezur corridor. So these logistical routes, these transportation routes, it is, and one of the outgrowths of this peace agreement, of this like August 8th deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, negotiated and presided by American president, is the so-called 1-2-3 agreement, according to which Armenia might get some significant like technical and logistical help from United States to renew its nuclear infrastructure.
Right, so it does seem like Armenia does want to rely on the West, rely on the United States more than it does want to rely on Russia, given the political reasons. But of course, we've seen time and again, be it European countries, the other countries as well, a lot of times eventually people would take things that are more cost beneficial when it comes to eventually making great big scale decisions. Do you think that there is enough political will to push it over the edge and not perhaps tread on the same mistakes that a lot of countries, be it in Europe, relying on Russian energy or Chinese manufacturing, kind of fall into?
Well, Europe had very rude awakening 3.5 years ago with the Russian invasion in Ukraine. It took them some time, and it proved to be very costly to modify its energy dependency, to lessen its energy dependency on Russia. And at some point, every country comes to this question, comes to this actually kind of fork of the road. Yeah. So Armenia is at the crossroads right now, and it definitely it's willing to take the steps which lessen its dependency on Russia, knowing that it will necessarily translate into the political dependency, something that current Armenian leadership and a significant portion of the population try to end.
Right, and you mentioned the 1-2-3 project as well as other attempts from the American side to help them sort of smooth out the process. Do you think there's more that perhaps the West can also do to aid them in that process to make sure that, they choose to, their choice to not rely on Russian energy will be a little bit smoother when it comes to that transition period?
Yes, the transition period is hard, and what we have seen on the part of the West and the citizens of Georgia and many citizens of Ukraine and some other countries who have been at the receiving end of Russia's, I would say, monkey business and Russian perfidies would tell you the real complaint and something that we're dissatisfied is either the lack of political will on the part of the West or very slow awakening. It takes them usually more time than necessary to realize that Russia represents a serious threat, and since right now the theater of war and the conflict is on the post-Soviet state, so it will take only a few years actually kind of just for Europe actually to feel firsthand this new imperial Russian project and planning. Therefore, I believe that the Western powers should be more decisive in this regard. I think after this invasion in Ukraine, full-scale invasion in Ukraine, this understanding is already in place. We can see in the rhetorics of the German leadership, of the French leadership, certain pronouncements of American leadership, which seems to be really disappointed with these deal-making attempts with Russia, that political will might be there. At least there is a realization, but of course, some flesh should be put on the bones.
All right, so coming back to our original question, how pivotal and how effective do you think this will be if Armenia does decide to use the West, use the U.S. help to build this nuclear power plant when it comes to actually affecting its relation with Russia and be more independent from it?
Obviously, it will incur Russia's wrath. Of course, it will be couched in kind of diplomatic language. I mean, kind of official language. But I have to watch Russian TV because it's part of my job, being a citizen of post-Soviet country.
I'm sorry.
A person who is engaged in post-Soviet. Yeah, of course, you understand it. So, and this, every independent step on the part of Armenian leadership incurs the wrath. And, usually these pundits in Russia, sometimes they're ethnically Armenian, to underscore kind of their dissatisfaction and disappointment. Obviously, there will be ramifications, but today it seems that Russia is weaker politically. Its hands are tied in Ukraine. We saw very recently that basically Putin apologized to Azerbaijani President Aliyev, something like unheard of. I think this meeting, their brief meeting in Dushanbe, where Russia acknowledged its fault in downing like Azerbaijani aircraft and its commitment like to pay the compensation, I think it signified a new stage in this relationship between Russia and post-Soviet countries. It seems that it is possible to bend Russia, to actually kind of just like to arm wrest it and gain political points and like have a political victory over Russia. I think it's now possible. Azerbaijan set an example. If Armenia follows kind of this path, and it follows it successfully without significant, I would say, cost in terms of energy security, I think this will be another success story, something that this region needs badly.
All right, last but not least, like you mentioned, it does seem like Russia's relation with these post-Soviet countries is a little bit weaker than before. It's losing its grip. It's not maintaining the same sort of attitude that it has. Do you think that this is the latest step as an isolated incident, or do you think that this could be a pattern going forward where we see more and more of these countries starting to rely more on the West, starting to detach itself eventually from Russia?
Obviously, the will is there, but there is the matter of cost and benefit. It could be very costly. So, well, Georgia sees it now because since like parts of Georgia are occupied and like Russian like occupation forces are like 45 kilometers from Tbilisi, you see how meek Georgia is behaving political because of this fear. So the will is there, but there is a realization that Russia is like looming large. So with this current like war in Ukraine and with Russia being like so bogged down, there is a window of opportunity. Even we see in Kazakhstan, like until recently, very loyal member of the CIS and Russia-led international institutions. Even Kazakhstan tries to like raise its independent voice. Armenia is blessed by not sharing a border with Russia. Therefore, I think that this is a time for the leadership to act. All the more since, so the elections are coming next year, and Russia makes no secret it considers this as a decisive battle for regaining, I would say, its foothold in the South Caucasus and particularly in Armenia.
Right, that's very interesting. So yeah, this power plant perhaps is not just a one structure, but also like a bellwether to test which way the wind is blowing. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on Eastern Express.
Thank you.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. More support is coming for Ukraine's defense efforts. 7 new countries have announced plans to contribute to a key international initiative providing weapons to Kyiv.
Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha confirmed the expansion of the so-called PURL program during a press conference in Kyiv, alongside EU High Representative for Foreign Policy Kaja Kallas. PURL is the only centralized system for coordinating the purchase of US weapons for Ukraine, backed by NATO and EU nations. The program focuses on supplying Ukraine with critical defense systems like Patriot missiles and HIMARS launchers. With winter approaching and Russian attacks intensifying, the addition of 7 more countries is expected to significantly boost Ukraine's ability to protect its territory and civilians. The countries newly expressing intent to join include Slovenia, Luxembourg, Iceland, Belgium, the Baltic states and one unnamed partner. This brings the total number of participating nations to 13.
Continues to benefit from our joint military support.
A Russian spy couple is facing trial in Poland. Authorities say they tried to send a bomb through a courier service as part of a covert sabotage campaign.
Polish prosecutors have charged 2 Russian citizens, Ihor R. and Irina R., with espionage and attempted sabotage. The pair allegedly worked for Russia's FSB and used encrypted devices and parser services to transmit intelligence and explosives. The case is part of what investigators call Russia's parcel war, a series of sabotage attempts using explosive packages aimed at disrupting NATO logistics and spreading terror across Europe. One parcel, intercepted in Łódź, contained a shaped charge bomb with Soviet-made detonators and powdered aluminum, capable of causing serious damage. Ihor R. is accused of collecting intelligence on Russian opposition figures in Poland and passing it to his wife, who tried to deliver it to Russian operatives via a parcel. Prosecutors say the parcel also contained a bomb. In a separate incident, Ihor R. allegedly collaborated with 2 Ukrainians and another Russian to send another explosive package. One of the Ukrainian suspects, Kristina S., has already been convicted. The Russian couple has been in custody since July 2024, and the case is now before the district court in Sosnowiec. Russia denies involvement, calling the accusations conspiracy theories.
Russia has issued a new arrest warrant for Vladimir Kara-Murza. The prominent opposition figure was freed last year in a major prisoner swap, but now faces fresh accusations.
The Russian Interior Ministry has placed Vladimir Kara-Murza on its wanted list, though the exact charges remain unspecified. Kara-Murza, who was released in 2024 after serving part of a 25-year sentence for treason, is now accused of terrorism and extremism over his role in an anti-war rally in Berlin earlier this year. State media report that both Kara-Murza and fellow activist Ilya Yashin have been officially designated as terrorists. In August, Kara-Murza also accused the Russian embassy in Washington of refusing to renew his passport, calling it a revival of Soviet-era tactics to silence dissidents. Kara-Murza was originally jailed in 2022 after publicly condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine and lobbying Western governments to impose sanctions. His sentence was one of the harshest handed to a Kremlin critic in recent years.
And that's all for this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.